chose World War II as the subject of conflict because it is known worldwide and has interesting types of conflict and compromise. World War II relates to conflict and compromise because the Nazis, led by Adolf Hitler, would capture, kill, and incarcerate thousands of Jews. Our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, wanted to protect us from war, but had to compromise, and soon we had to join World War II. Because the Germans' ally, Japan, had bombed Pearl Harbor, Germany declared war on the USA, not the other way around. Americans felt isolated, and many people indeed wanted in on these wars to help their Jewish and European friends. Our fellow Kentuckian, Garner Merle Connor, was drafted into World War II in 1941. We selected Lieutenant Connor as the main subject of our documentary because he is not well known and is from Kentucky. We believe his heroism and bravery helped win the war and resolve the conflict that was World War II. He was born in Erin, Kentucky. He was the third child of 11 brothers and sisters. He and 4 of his brothers served in World War II. Connor was drafted for military service and entered the U.S. Army on March 1, 1941 in Louisville, Kentucky. He completed his basic training at Fort Lewis, Washington, where he became a member of the K Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Infantry Regiment, and 3rd Infantry Division. In 1942, Connor and his division departed the U.S. from Norfolk, Virginia, to fight in the European, African, Middle Eastern theater of operations in the invasion of French North Africa. He earned his 2nd Silver Star in the Anzio campaign in Italy. On December 29, 1944, he was promoted to First Lieutenant. Connor was awarded 4 Silver Stars for gallantry in action on October 1943, January 1944, September 1944, and February 1945. He was also awarded the Bronze Star Medal and 3 Purple Hearts for being wounded in action. He was presented the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism during a German counterattack on January 24, 1945, near Hussy, France. Connor charged 400 yards into an intense German tank, artillery, and infantry assault. Almost single-handedly, Connor turned back the enemy advance and prevented heavy casualties in his own battalion. A citation awarding Connor the Distinguished Service Cross states that amid exploding shells and automatic weapon fire, Connor unreeled a spool of telephone wire, which enabled him to call for artillery help. For 3 hours, he lay in a shallow ditch as wave after wave of German infantry surged toward him, at times to within 5 yards of his position. As the last all-out German assault swept forward, he ordered his artillery to concentrate on his own position, resolved to die if necessary to halt the enemy. Connor's commanding officer wrote, "Friendly shells exploded within 5 yards of him, blanketing his position, but Lieutenant Connor continued to direct artillery fire on the assault elements swarming around him until the German attack was shattered and broken." His fellow infantrymen said Connor frequently volunteered to take the point on the most dangerous patrols. One officer remembered that when volunteers were requested for an especially dangerous night mission into enemy territory, Connor was the only one who reported to the commander's tent. "Where are the rest?" the commander asked. "I'm it," Connor replied. Connor repeatedly risked his life under enemy fire to capture and disable numerous enemy positions. In March 1945, Connor was sent back to the U.S. before his unit was assigned occupational duty in Germany and Austria. He was honorably discharged on June 22, 1945, before the war ended.
Connor married Lida Pauline Wells on July 9th, 1945. After the war, the Connors had one son, Paul, one grandson, and 3 granddaughters, and lived in Albany, Kentucky. Connor was the farming business working his farm in Albany, Kentucky. He was active in various veterans organizations, including the Paralyzed Veterans of America. He was handicapped from his war wounds and heart surgery in 1979. Connor died in 1998 and was buried in Memorial Hill Cemetery in Albany. In 2012, the U.S. Army honored Connor by designating a portion of the new maintenance faculty at Fort Benning, Georgia, as Connor Hall.
To continue our project, we're going to interview Mr. Roy Hensel. How can soldiers receive some of the awards that you have?
Okay, now this is a very special award. This is called the Purple Heart, and one receives that by being wounded in action. So that's very special. Other awards would be patches. I'm not sure what some of these stand for, but like on this uniform, I know that these patches stand for 6 months overseas for each bar. So that represents 2.5 years overseas, and it's his unit and other bars over here that he's received. So yeah, that's the awards they might receive.
And can you tell us about some of the other artifacts, like these dog tags?
These dog tags belong to Dudley Reddick, who received this Purple Heart. Dudley came from Carlisle County, which is right next to Ballard County, near McCracken County. Other things that he also was stationed in Italy, and he had this with him. This is government issued Italian money for the soldiers. Some other things that I have are this Russian phrase book, which the soldiers were handed because Russia was our ally, and they needed to know how to communicate. For example, if they needed gasoline for the tank, they could ask for benzine, and they'd know how to say it. I found this artifact in an old abandoned house. It's a Nazi armband, which is scary, as well as this. This is a piece of foundation from Dachau, which was a concentration camp, a Nazi concentration camp in Germany. And that was all part of the Holocaust.
And did you know someone or their family that was involved in the war?
Well, I knew Dudley Reddick's family because I taught with his niece. And if you're thinking about the end of the war, how the war ended, basically it ended after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I have some letters from like Paul Tibbets, who was the pilot of the Enola Gay, which is the plane that dropped the bomb right here. And he explains what he saw that day, and also from the bombardier who actually dropped the bomb, who said that he thought he was doing right, doing his duty, and that it would literally save thousands of lives.
Well, thank you for your time and information on these artifacts from World War II.
You're welcome.
In conclusion, World War II was a historical conflict with many compromises given by the people who made up the armed forces. Lieutenant Connor received many awards for his bravery and services to the country. His sacrifices and bravery helped win the war and resolve the conflict that was World War II. The Germans were defeated because of the sacrifice and compromise made by Lieutenant Connor and the armed forces.